Shalom, Kol Halol, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. Double honors unto the apostles, double honors unto the elder bishops. Salutations to all my fellow laborers doing this work in truth and sincerity, risking their lives and their freedom to do so now more so than ever. To the 144,000 in the scattered elect that are scattered around the four corners of the earth, that be like unto the speckled bird among the heathen that look like those heathens. And to the few Akwaf that are listening and learning, this is your brother Malcolm coming at you with another lesson in truth back into this book, Who Bought the Slaves to America. And its brand is by the Christian Book Club, and it still has a mystery author, although it gives you references. So one of these references for information is The International Jew, which was written by Henry Ford of the Ford Motor Company, who supported Hitler. A lot of people don't know that. And Malcolm Cawley, all right? And his book called Adventures of an African Slaver by Malcolm Cawley in 1928. All right, so these are two of the references, but there's a mystery author still. But the history checks out when you go into the records. So they were careful to try and cover these things up. We're also going to prove that point, we're going to go into this book, Gangsters and Organized Crime in Jewish Chicago by Alex Franson, Alex Garrell Franson. I did a lesson on that book probably about 6 years ago, and I got hit with a hate speech or something, and I said nothing hateful at all. It was just history written by their own people, and I just brought it out. But you know how that goes. But I'm going to start reading on page 5 of Who Brought the Slaves to America. And where am I going? Oh, yeah, right here at Newport. So I'm on the second paragraph on page 5. And it says, Newport also became a great trade harbor of the east coast of North America. The vessels from other ports met to exchange commodities. Newport, as previously mentioned, represented the foremost place of commerce of rum, whiskey, liquor, and dealings. Remember, rum was one of the major things that they traded the Israelites, the so-called falsely called Negroes and blacks. They would trade it, for musket guns and wine. There's even a movie where there's a musical scene about it, where they sing about it. All right. But it says, and to conclude, it finally became the main center of slave dealings. It was from this port that the ships left on their way across the ocean to gather black human cargo and then derive great sums of money in exchange for them. And those ships were not going empty. They would leave America, go to Europe, and drop off the natives, which they also called coloreds at one, because in 1683. It was either 1682 or 1683. Both the Negro and the Native American were categorized as the same people and called colored. All right, they were called colored people. And then also later on in the 1800s, the Native Americans who looked more Negro were labeled as Negro, or were darker complected, were labeled Negro. So it's a lot of Native Americans that are walking around today with the label black upon them. All right. So the tribes, there was intermixing between Judah and Gad and Reuben at this time, and that's why in 1683 in Virginia they passed that. Let me see if I can find. There's actually you go to the records to there's an image of that, and I think I may have an image of that in my evidence folder, is what I called it. Images that I've saved and collected over the years. All right, like this one, Northern Jewish Encyclopedia says that Azareth is America. All right, but let me see if I can find that. Just bear with me for a moment. I'm just scrolling through these images. I'm about 99% sure that I have that. I know I've had it, you know. Hopefully I didn't delete it on accident or something like that, because that's one I tried to keep. Yeah, I could just do a lesson on going through these images, man. The history connected to them, and how it completely debunks being that these images are old, and it completely debunks most of the history that we've been taught. Wait, here we go. I found one. Wasn't the one I was looking for, but here we go. It says Virginia passed 2 acts in 1682 that combined the Native Americans and Africans into the categories as Negroes. So often when they was calling them Negroes, they were referring to natives as Negroes too, right? And there you go. And when you consider that in 1681, the Edomites began to call themselves white people. All right, they labeled themselves white first in law in 1681 in Virginia. So it only makes sense that the very following year, screenshot and save, that they would combine both the dark Negro and the brown native, and they started calling them, they categorized them into one category and called them Negroes. All right. So I did have a copy of it. So let's continue reading. Page 5. Next paragraph. An authentic contemporary report based on authority indicates that the 128 slave ships, for instance, unloaded in Charleston within a year. Their cargo, 120 of these were undersigned by Jews from Newport and Charleston by their own name. About the rest of them, one can surmise, although they were entered in as Boston, Norfolk, Baltimore, their real owners were similarly the Jewish slave dealers from Newport and Charleston. So they really downplayed their involvement in it, and many of them claimed that they had nothing to do with it. And the fact of the matter is that they had everything to do with it. They completely ran it and controlled it. The other white people that were involved were just their employees. This was the slave. So the transatlantic slave trade was a Jewish operation, 100%. All right. And I'm still looking for the relics of Jewish people with yokes of irons around the neck, like the images you see on this, on the cover of this book. I'm still wondering, when that prophecy was fulfilled with them. All right. And it wasn't, because they're not the people. But this is Deuteronomy 28 and 48. And it reads, Therefore shalt thou serve thy enemies which Yahweh shall bring against thee, in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things, and he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. And our people truly are destroyed, because they don't want to let go of that term black. They're eating abominable things. They follow the false witchcraft, which is Christianity, Catholicism, which is witchcraft, which is Christianity. Those things they don't take heed. They use the Bible as a front, all right, and then apply their own spin to it, all right, and then many of our people gladly wear the term of Gentiles, even though the evidence, if you actually look at it honestly, is overwhelming that the Negro, Latino, Native American are the, collectively within them are the body of the true children of Israel. All right. And then, of course, you cannot count out the scattered among the heathen that look like the heathen, because that's biblical. That's what happened. That's historical. That's what happened. So some of our brothers and sisters got scattered among heathens where they don't look like the typical Negro, Latino, Native American. All right. You got to remember, Esau Edom is the one that tries to make this a color thing, where the Israelites, with those who are well learned and know the truth, know that it is a bloodline thing. All right. And that our bloodlines were interrupted. But as long as you can be traced back to Israel through the seed, not through the womb, all right? Because many of these women came off those boats pregnant, especially if they were attractive and young, all right? They got trains ran on them continuously. They would have their way with the girls. And they would all take turns with them over and over again. And I'm sure it happened, more than one at a time. But it says one is able to assess the Jewish share in the entire dealings of Newport if it considers the undertaking of the lone Jew, the Portuguese Aaron Lopez, who plays an important part in the overall story of Jewish slavery. And it's true. Just, Columbus used to say, follow the money. And this guy, Aaron Lopez, is connected to a lot of things. All right. And as another partner, his name's gonna pop up too. And I recognize his name when I get there. But it says, concerning the entire commerce of the colonies and the latter state of Rhode Island, which included Newport bills of lading, concessions, receipts, and port clearances carried the signature name of Aaron Lopez. This all took place during the years of 1726 to 1774. Almost 25 years, all right? Almost. It was like 23 years. He had, therefore, more than 50% of all the dealings under the personal control for almost 50 years, aside from that there, I said 23, meant 50. 53. Aside from that there were the other ships which he owned but sailed under other names. So this man owned many ships, all right? In the year 1749, the first Masonic Lodge was established. 90% of the members of the first lodge, 14, are all told were Jews, and one knows that only so-called prominent individuals were accepted. 20 years later, the second Masonic Lodge, King David, was established. In fact, in all these, flipping the page to page 7, to page 6. Ooh, that page 7 is going to be fire when we get there. We're going to stop short of that, though. Page 8. We're going to stop it before we get there. That'll be the third installment. It says, but the members were Jews, which makes me think of Deuteronomy 28 and 44. They were making money hand over fist, with the Israelites. And the Israelites weren't making money. So so the way the Jews were making money, they don't fit the prophecy of being on the bottom, being the low, being the borrowers. They were the actual lenders. And this is Deuteronomy 24 and 44. And it reads, he shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail. So clearly, these even in this land that was built by the other Edomites, the other white folk, so-called, the Jewish people were in control from the sidelines, all right, because they established their businesses quick, all right, and they started buying out people and buying, controlling, putting aldermen in office and mayors and, governors and that whole sort of thing, and quickly start developing, different organizations like, for example, modern day ADL, APAC, chapter 1, page 6, and it reads, in the meantime, Jewish influence in Newport reached such proportions that President George Washington decided to pay them a visit. See what I mean? Upon his appearance, both the Masonic lodges sent an emissary and a Jew named Moses. Oh, let's turn it off. Slovakia. I'm wanting the interruptions. All right. It says, decided to pay them a visit. Upon his appearance, both Masonic lodges sent an emissary, the Jew named Moses Sextus, approached the president with a petition in which the Jews of Newport stated, if you will permit the children of Abraham, which indeed they are, he's not lying. They are the children of Abraham. They're just not the children of Jacob. They're the children of Jacob's twin brother Esau, the red one, the pale one, all right? That red, pinkish, pale individual, all right? Jacob was born brown and normal like everyone else in the world at that time. But Esau was born red, which was odd, which is why they spoke about his color. All right, because he was the first of his kind. All right, and it says, if you will permit the children of Abraham to approach you and request to tell you that we honor you and we feel an alliance, and then until the present time the valuable rights of free citizens have been withheld. However, now we see a new government coming into being based in majesty of the people, a government not sanctioning any bigotry nor persecution of the Jew, rather to concede freedom throughout which each shares whatever nation or language as a part of the great government machine. So he's talking about freedom and government machines and freedom of a person to and no bigotry while being slavers. Okay, which makes me think of Sirach 10:8. Which y'all read that. Let me read the next paragraph. All right, it says, it is necessary to point out and consider the disclosures as to whom the reality obtained the legal legendary freedom in America as founding of the Union. To be sure, the province became independent and severed from the English jurisdiction. However, we can see from the petition which Moses Sextus offered President Washington in the name of the Jews of Newport that it was not in reality the type of freedom which they had in mind. They were merely concerned about themselves and their own civil rights, which had been withheld, therefore, following the Revolutionary War, and the Jews were accorded equal rights and freed of all restrictions, and the Negroes, the Revolutionary War notwithstanding, they remained slaves. In 1750, 1/6 of the population of New York was Negroid. All right, so remember that now the natives are included in that number. That's what happened to a lot of them. They just got renamed, and you look at them every day and you call them black. All right, and it says, and in the 1750s, 1/6 of the population of New York was Negroid. Proportionately, the southern parts of the country, they outnumbered the others, but the proclamation of freedom did not touch them. More of this later. So, right, and you got to remember too, a lot of those natives also got rounded up and sent into slavery into the South, and were put right on the plantations with the Negroes. Okay. And let me read this next paragraph. Let us scrutinize at close range the dismissal handwork of the Jews, which gave them influence and power. So we comprehend the slave trade, for there has been so much written since the time by zealous Jewish writers that at present time long since removed. So they removed. That's why people don't talk about this stuff, because they removed a lot of it. Okay, it might appear natural for the time of elements have tendency to make things nebulous. Time and nebulous meaning hazy. So now the history is hazy and kind of fades away like a vapor. That's what nebulous means. All right. Let's go to Sirach 10:8, and then we're gonna go to that other book. All right, and wrap this one up, then conclude part 2, and prepare for part 3. But in Sirach, Ecclesiastes, the book of Sirach, Ecclesiasticus 17, I don't know how that happened. 10:8, it says, because of unrighteous dealings and injuries and riches got by deceit, the kingdom is translated from one people unto another. So this is how, not just the Jewish, but Esau and Edom, but mainly them, because they're the wealthiest and most powerful of Esau, Edom, which is why the rest of Edom is pointing fingers at them. They didn't really share the wealth with them. All right, but that's how they got their wealth. And then by hiding their history and whitewashing history. So let's click to this next book now, Gangsters and Organized Crime. Okay? And I'm going to turn to page 14 and be careful because, I remember what happened last time I went into this book. Yeah, this is page 14, the bottom paragraph. And it says the rest of the book analyzes. Do I want to start up? I start up in the middle of the second paragraph. The subsequent chapters centers on the streets of Jewish ghetto, how its environment led youth down the path of juvenile delinquency and involvement in boys gangs. The streets also expose the children to surrounding ethnic groups, cultivating both positive and negative interaction, and introduce them to the realities of anti-Semitism. I had to throw that in there. The youth's misconduct elicited varied responses and proposed solutions for Jewish community. The third chapter considers the transition of juvenile delinquents into organized crime and reasons for why some Jews made such a passage. Additionally, it introduces the reader to the Chicago underworld and how the Jewish ghetto fit into the landscape of the vice and immorality. The rest of the book analyzes Jews in various criminal ventures to demonstrate how their involvement impacted Chicago Jewry and how the community responded to the gangsters. Though interesting, I intentionally do not extensively discuss Jewish gangsters or organized crime outfits such as Al Capone's syndicate, because these figures were generally further removed from the Jewish community and did not directly reveal as much about the neighborhood. Indeed, well, they don't do that with so-called blacks and Hispanics. No matter how you in Hollywood and you mess up. But anyway, let's go to page 119. All right. And I'm going to read from the second paragraph. Actually, I'll start right here. It says, Old world culture and young generations of Jews spoke English over Yiddish. Moreover, the vanishing ghetto afforded its former population to relative increase in economic mobility. Orthodox Jews began to rise in society as Americans. They had already risen. They were sitting on old money. Aaron Lopez. All right. Indeed, the Jews moved with the purpose out of Maxwell Street ghetto, which they had, whorehouses, pool halls, and and drug dens. They had all kind of stuff down there. All right. It says, and there was fit between the geographic mobility on the hand of the social economic mobility. This upward advancement, coupled with the increasing respectability and relative decrease in American anti-Semitism, corresponded to decline of the Jewish crime and gangsters in the city. Significance of Chicago Jewry to the closing of the ghetto was, in many ways, the end of the Jewish gangsters. Newspapers increasingly omitted the religious marker. According to Jewish criminals, Jewish criminals became simply gangsters. All right, so so when you hear gangster, you're automatically thinking of the Italian mafia, the Irish mafia, but it turns out that the biggest and some of the most involved people in the organized crime syndicate, well, what you just heard. Let me go to one more scripture and wrap this up. Let's go to Proverbs. It's Luke 8:17. Everything that's in the dark shall come to the light, man. But let's go to Proverbs 26. 26 and 26, although you can read from 24 to the end. But it reads, whose hatred is covered by deceit. His wickedness shall be shown before the whole congregation. Scopel, the whole world's eyes are on Amalek. So with that, I'm going to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Wakak Wadash, Kwam Yasserala, Shalom.